everybody, I'm Corinne Blackstone and welcome to my craft room. I'm so happy to have you here today. In today's video, we're going to be doing some glass etching, and I'm going to be using this little dish that I got from Amazon. I'll link everything that we're using down below, and then I also like to use some Armour etch. This is my favorite etching cream, and I've been using this one for years, so it's the one I recommend, but there's lots out there on the market, so give some a try, see which one works best for you. But I'll link all of this stuff down below. Now, one thing that's really important and that I see a lot of people have problems with is that they're unable to etch their glass. Their glass won't etch. And it's because they're using borosilicate glass. And I'll put the word right here because I'm not 100% sure that I'm pronouncing it correctly. But this is a type of glass, and the way that that glass is made, it's made so that it is less likely to have problems with like temperature shifts if you're putting it in the oven or the refrigerator, stuff like that. It makes it a little bit stronger of a glass. A lot of Pyrex dishes are made out of this, so you just want to make sure you're reading what type of glass you're using. Regular glass and tempered glass work great for this. This one is tempered glass, and it came out really, really nice. I'll give you guys a close-up look before we get started. So let's go ahead. We're going to head over to Design Space. I'm going to show you how to design this, and then we're going to get it all cut out. Now, be sure that you're subscribed here. That way you don't miss out on any fun, crafty content we have coming. We're going to be using a design from Creative Fabrica for this, and we're going to do a little bit of changing up to it so that it fits what we want it to look like. The first thing that we're going to do is to download our design, which we can do simply by clicking download. The next thing we'll do is save it to the folder that we want to save it in, and I'm going to click save. Now I need to make sure that I unzip my file, so I'm going to open the folder that I just downloaded, click extract all, and click extract. I'm going to leave the extracted folder open, which is this one here, and I'm going to close that one. We're going to head over to Cricut Design Space and upload our design. Here in Design Space, simply click upload image, and then we can drag and drop our file here. I'm going to use the SVG for the sunflower monogram, and you'll notice that it looks a little bit blurry, but don't worry, it will not be blurry once we get it into our canvas. Because it's an SVG, we can just simply click upload a couple times and it will be in our design. Now, for this design, you'll see that it's not in any kind of a layer, but I want to get rid of the welcome to our home because I'm putting this on the base of a cutting board and not on like a sign. So there's a couple of ways that I can do this, and you use whichever way works best for you. The first way is we can use the contour option down here at the bottom. When we click on that, we're able to remove pieces of our design that we don't like by just clicking on them, and it will remove them. You can see if you look below where the little box is here, as I click each of the letters, they disappear. But with smaller designs, this can be a little bit tedious, and especially ones that have like letter centers, it can really be difficult to do that. So if that is a little bit annoying and difficult with your design, you can also use slice. So I'm going to open up my shapes option, and it doesn't really matter what shape you use, but I'm just going to use a circle. I'm going to pull my circle out, and I'm going to kind of turn it a little bit. Now you may need to do this in a couple of different like moves. You can't do it all at once a lot of times, but that's okay. I've got it covering a lot of the words, so I'm going to select both items, which is the sunflower and our circle or oval now. I'm going to click slice, and it's going to take apart this piece. So I can delete this oval, and then I can delete the two parts of the words. Now again, you can use whatever shape you want, whatever one's going to work for your area. So you just want to make sure that you're only covering the words, you're not covering any part of your design. So I don't want to do it like this. I want to make sure none of those petals are covered, and I only want to cover the words. Now remember, you can only slice 2 layers at a time. So because this is just a single layer and our rectangle is a single layer, we're able to use slice. So I'm going to slice both of those again. And like I said, you do whichever way works best for you, but you can easily get rid of the parts you don't want. I just want this section here, and I'm going to add my own text to this, and I'm going to have it say Blackstone. And then from here, you can choose whatever font you want to for your wording. Now I'm going to stick mine kind of in the middle here just so I can kind of get a look at it. But you can scroll through your fonts and pick which one you want. Or you can use a website called wordmark.it, and I'll show you that one here in a second because this takes a really long time to load each of the fonts if you want to look at them and see what they're going to look like. So let's head over to wordmark.it so I can show you a quick trick. Over in wordmark.it, you can type in whatever phrase or word you want this to show you, and then just go ahead and hit the arrow key. Now, you can go through all the fonts on your computer. This won't pull up Cricut fonts, but it pulls up your computer fonts, and you can kind of click on the ones that you think you might want to use. Now, I'm not really sure exactly kind of what look I'm going for, whether I want a script look or whether I want something a little more plain like this. So I'm going to scroll through and pick a few fonts that I think I might like that might work for the design that I'm using, and then we can compare them over on Cricut Design Space. Now that I've gone through all my fonts and I've chosen some that I like, I can click right here where it says filter selected fonts, and then it's going to show me the different fonts that I selected. What's great about this is now I can kind of look at them and say, maybe that's not quite the look I'm going for. I feel like this one's a little too, it's just not it. It's just not what I want. And same with this aubergine. I don't think that's quite the look I'm going for. And same with black sample. It's not it. And you can really kind of weed this down into what type of style you want, how you want it to look. Like, this simplicity is cute, but I just think it's a little too fancy for kind of what I'm using this for. And from here, we can kind of say, okay, these are the ones we like. We like Lovely Mood Display, Lovely Mood Script, Marvin Round, and Timberly Script. So let's go back to Design Space and we can look at each of those fonts. In Design Space, I can look for the font that I have chosen by just typing in the name of it. So you see here, I have Lovely Mood Display. Now, one thing that I personally like to do is I'm going to duplicate the word, and then I'm going to change the font on the next one to the other font that I want to see. So I want that one to be the Lovely Mood Script. This way I'm going to be able to really compare them on the actual design. I'm going to duplicate this again because I'm going to make this one that Timberly. Now, I will say sometimes the fonts can be a little bit slow to load, so you just give them a minute, but I'm going to make this one that Timberly Script, and then I'm going to duplicate it one more time and make the other one that Marvin font that we liked, and that way I can see them all on the sunflower, kind of play with them, and see which one's going to fit best for the style and like the sizing of our sunflower. Now, some reason that one didn't want to find Marvin. Sometimes Design Space is a little bit weird and it won't always find the font that you want because sometimes it has like a weird name or something. And a lot of times when mine does that, it'll end up down here somewhere in the bottom. But if I can't find it, I'm not really that worried about it. It wasn't my favorite, so it's okay that we can't find that one. So now I'm just going to delete that extra one for now, and we're going to take a look at these three designs. Now, I personally like to look at them so that they're the same color of the design because it's all going to be etched at the bottom of that glass. So I'm just going to make all of them black really quick just so I can get a better look. Now I'm going to start with this one because I think so far this one's probably my least favorite as far as like how this is going to fit in here. I just don't like it. I don't think it's quite what I was looking for. So I can delete that one right off the rip. Not really it. And honestly, seeing this one now, I don't think I like it either. I just don't think it fits the vibe. I think this one's going to be the winner. I think this one's going to give us the best look for what I'm going for. And I'm also going to do another thing. I'm going to actually move these letters just a little bit further apart. They're a little close for me for the design. So what I'm going to do is up here on letter spacing, I'm just going to space them out a little bit. I don't want them to be like too spaced out, but like 0.8 just gives me a little bit more room. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select this and I'm going to align it and I want to center it right here, center horizontally. And once I have that, I'm pretty happy, but I could also trim off these extra edges if I don't want them. I think they look a little bit awkward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a square and I'm just going to place it so that it's right at the edge of where that petal is. And I think I'm going to slice it off. Now I'm a little worried it might not line up great because this petal's really far away, but I'm just going to see what it looks like. I can always undo it. Now again, remember we can only slice 2 layers. So I just need to select the square and the design, not the font. And I can go ahead and slice. Once that's sliced out, I can actually take the square and reuse it. I just have to make sure that it lines up where these lines are not showing, and then I can kind of delete this and I can just see if I like it without those super long lines on it. Like I said, it may not be quite even enough for my taste, but I'm going to take a look and just see what I think. Now I'm going to go ahead and recenter the Blackstone now that I've done that. So I'm going to go to align, and then I want to center it. It's going to move it over a bit, but I actually really think that looks much better than the lines sticking out super far from the design here. I just think that it looks a little bit better. Now comes to sizing. So we know that our dish is 5.7 inches by 7 inches. So it's a pretty small dish, but it will work really well for this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little template to use as our baking dish. So I'm going to grab a little square here, and up at the top I want to unlock our measurements, which is for our scale. Now I'm going to make mine 7 inches wide and 5.7 high. That way, that's going to give me kind of the sizing of our dish. I'm going to right click on this and send this to the back. Now, you could use this with a guide if you wanted to, where you change it just to like a little red outline or it's pink outline. But I'm actually going to be using this for part of our design. So let me change the color so that we can see a little bit better. Now what I want to do is I'm going to take this design here and I'm going to attach it. That way it's going to hold together, and when I size it, it's going to be easier to make sure I have all the pieces. Now I'm going to size this down to fit into my baking dish. Now one thing I will say is that I could have used a little bit more of like a rectangular shaped design if I wanted to, but I really thought the sunflower was so pretty. So this is the design that I chose. Now I don't want it to cover too much of the baking dish bottom. I just don't want it to be like over the edges or anything. So I think that this size is pretty good. What I want to do now is I'm going to select both of my pieces. So I'm going to select the monogram design and the rectangle. I'm going to use the align option, and I'm going to use the full center option. Now for this step, this is going to be used as a stencil. So in order to use it as a stencil, I'm going to weed away anything that is black. But to make this easier so that I have enough spacing on the sides so that none of my etching cream goes off the edges, I'm actually just going to attach it to this little square rectangle. Now it's going to look like it turns all yellow, and it's going to actually cut this out beautifully, and we can use everything as a stencil. Now, because we are putting this on the back of our baking dish and we want to be able to see it through the front of our dish, we need to mirror our design. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this, and I'm going to flip it horizontally, and that is going to mirror our design. By mirroring it, when we go to place this on to our baking dish, we place it on the underside of the dish. When we flip it over and it's all etched, you'll be able to see the wording through it, and it's going to face the correct way. This is something really important to do when you're making these, so make sure that you mirror your design. Next thing I want you to do is click save, and I'm going to save this as baking dish etch. That way I know what I'm using it for, and I can go ahead and save. It's really important to save your design just in case Design Space makes a mistake when you hit make, which is usually where I find that I end up with any of the issues. So now when I click make, it's going to bring up my canvases or my mats here, and you'll see what it's going to do is it's going to cut out our Blackstone and our sunflower, but then it's also going to cut a square around it, which is going to make it easier for us to know where to weed, as well as making it easier for us to have enough space around the edge of our design so that none of that etching cream comes off. I'm going to be cutting this on the vinyl setting on my Cricut, and it does not matter what color vinyl you use. You can use permanent, you can use removable, you can use stencil vinyl. I personally use permanent just because I have so much of it, and I'll find a color that I have a lot of or that I just don't use much or I don't like, and that's what I use for my stenciling. So let's head over to the machine, get this cut out, get this weeded, and then we're going to go ahead and etch this, and I'm going to share with you all the secrets that I use to make sure that my etchings come out beautiful every single time. Now that we have everything weeded out, we're going to use some transfer tape. I'm using medium tack, and I'll link everything that we use in this video down below. But one thing that's really important when you're doing stenciling like this is to make sure you have a good transfer tape. Everybody thinks that you can just use whatever, but honestly, having a good transfer tape that you're confident in makes a big difference. Now I'm going to trim this off, and I am going to then use my squeegee and burnish this from the back. What's great about this transfer tape is that it is that medium tack, but it also likes to hold on to vinyl really well, but it will also release it super easy. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna burnish this from the back, and I wanna make sure that I get any bubbles out that might be in that transfer tape. So I'm gonna just burnish in a couple of different directions. You don't have to push crazy hard on this. Like, you don't need to use all your body weight. Just a little bit of pressure will do. I'm gonna flip this over and just make sure everything looks good, like nothing looks like it got out of place. Then I wanna peel the backing of the vinyl away from the vinyl and not the transfer tape. This works so much better than taking your transfer tape off, like doing it the other direction. And now when I do this, you're gonna see that this is the correct direction. Do you see how now you can read the word better? So that's why we do mirror it, because this is gonna go on the bottom of this little baking dish. Now, I have cleaned my baking dish with some rubbing alcohol. That is something that's really important that you have for this. And then I'm gonna take my vinyl and I'm gonna place it down onto my dish. Now I wanna take my time. I wanna make sure I get this straight, I get this centered. So I'm just kind of using my eyeballs. Now let's say maybe we're not so comfortable finding center with just using your eyes. We have a trick for that. I'm just gonna use a Sharpie. It'll wipe off of glass, no problem. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take and find center on my glass. So it is about 6.5. That would make center 3 3/4. Try to get this open without moving too much. So I'm just gonna find that 3 and, actually I'm wrong, that's 3 1/4, not 3/4. So 3 1/4 would be right here. And then I'm gonna go this direction and find where half is. And half on this, we're about 5 inches or so. You're gonna have to guess a little bit. So I'm gonna say that center is gonna be like maybe 2.5. So our center point is kind of right here. This is our center point. So I just kind of make my lines a little bit bigger. Then we can come in with our stencil, and it's a little easier to lay it down now, and then we can wipe that off when we come in. So now that I kind of know where my center is, I'm gonna kind of line this up, and the top of our flower is a little bit bigger than the bottom of our flower. So your center is gonna be about where the K is, and then a little bit above where the word Blackstone is, because otherwise it's gonna sit a little bit too high. I actually want to scooch this over just a touch. All right, that looks good right there. All right, I think that's pretty centered, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now what I want to do is take my squeegee and I want to burnish down my entire design. Now I want to go all over it in all the directions, and I'm going to kind of go in a circle. I'm going to make sure I get all these letter centers, all the petals, and I want to make sure I get along the edges of everything. And you just take your time with this part because you really want to make sure that this is going to stay stuck. And don't worry, we'll wipe this off here in just a moment. Now, this part, you're going to take and peel your vinyl back. I find it helps to hold the corner down while you're starting this. Since we don't actually have the corners pressed on to our glass, it's just going to help you hold everything down a little bit better. Then you're just going to very carefully, and I like to use my hand, and I hold down my design as I'm pulling back. The reason I do this is it helps prevent any bubbles, any shifting. If something's not sticking really well, like this petal right here didn't seem like it was sticking great. So I'm just kind of coming through and just making sure all of my pieces and my parts are going to stay stuck down. Now, you're gonna take your time with this, so I'm gonna go speed this up so that you're not having to watch me do every second of this. But like I said, take your time. You wanna make sure you're kind of holding down your design a little bit. I use my hand just on the edge of that transfer tape, and I'm gonna go ahead and get this all peeled off, and then we can start with our glass etching cream. Once you've got all your transfer tape off, I want you to look at all the edges of your design, kind of go through. I'm going to wipe the Sharpie off here. It'll come right off with your finger. It's not permanently on there. And then I'm just going to make sure there's no bubbles around the edges. So what you can do is kind of move it back and forth. Use some light in your room to just check and make sure everything is smooth. If you got bubbles over here, not worried about them. You want to be worried only about the bubbles in your immediate direction of your design. So you want to check all the edges of your design. Just make sure there are no bubbles. Once you've checked for bubbles, I want you to wear gloves while doing this because you're using a chemical reaction and it's important to have some gloves. You can just use some ones like this. These are just nitrile gloves that I used for when I was doing epoxy. You can also just use some rubber gloves, like cleaning gloves, but just anything really to protect your hands, to make sure that they're not going to get any armor etch on them. I do also recommend taking off any jewelry or any smartwatches, just to be safe. That way you don't get any of the cream on anything that you really don't want to ruin. Now, I'm going to be using a sponge brush for this, and this is one of my secret little tricks. A sponge brush works better than a regular brush for this. It just seems to put the cream on a little bit better. Now, a lot of people say this cream smells terrible. I have to agree, it does not smell the best. It's kind of got a rotten egg scent to it. So I go in and I first grab whatever's around the edge just so I don't get that all over myself when I'm going into the jar. So I get anything that's around the edges here just to kind of clean that up. And then you can just see I'm dabbing it on. Now I'm going to go in and get a pretty decent dab here. And I'm dabbing it, not wiping. You don't want to wipe it. You want to dab it on. And you want a good, thick coat. And I want to make sure that I get every little tiny inch of my design. Now what's nice is when we're done, we're going to scrape all of this back into the bottle before we rinse it off, because you can reuse this, which is so nice. Not that this bottle will not last me a million years, because in reality, you don't actually use as much cream as you think you do. Now you can see how really well covered that side is. So I'm gonna go ahead, get the middle, and then I'll work my way to the other side. And then I'm gonna just check and make sure I didn't miss any spots, or there are no spots that look like they might have some thinner coverage to them. That way you make sure you don't miss anything. So let's go ahead, we're gonna finish dabbing this on, and then I'm gonna just check all my spots. We'll let this sit for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on, kind of if I get busy doing something else. And then we're gonna go rinse this off, where you're gonna want some gloves as well. You can just reuse the ones you wore to apply the cream to your design, and then you can rinse all this off. So let me go ahead and get this finished, and then we will get this rinsed. Let this sit for a little while, about 20 to 25 minutes. And what I'm going to do now is take all the excess stuff off of here. But you want to be gentle because you don't want to lift any of that vinyl. So I'm barely pressing down. I'm just pressing enough to get some of this cream off of here. Because again, you want to make sure that you're not going to get it under the vinyl. But you can totally reuse the cream. So I'm just going to scrape all this off and put it right back into the jar. Now you are gonna wanna throw out your brush that you used. You don't wanna use that again because it's got the chemical on it. And I'm just gonna get this last chunk here, and I think I can get a little bit off of that. And from here, we can go up to my sink, and we're gonna go ahead and rinse this off and reveal our design. Now we're ready to take this to the sink. I just use some lukewarm water and rub this off with my hand, making sure I remove all of it. Then you can go in and take off your vinyl. Make sure your vinyl doesn't go down your sink. It's not safe for the sewers or for your sink. So I just peel it off and put it to the side, and then I toss it when I'm done. I find that running the water while I'm removing it does seem to help, especially since it's warmer water. It warms up the design. Wait till you see this. I took it outside so you could get a really good look at it. I think this came out beautiful. It's really nice and even, and I think it just looks so good. One of the reasons it's so even is because we did a heavy coat on it and we let it sit for about 25 minutes. Usually don't have to go more than 15 to 20, but I kind of got distracted. But I really love how this came out, and I'm going to link everything that we used down below so that you can make your own etched glass. These make great gifts for weddings, for birthdays, for Christmas, all sorts of things. Any way to make a fun type of personalized item. Remember to stay away from the borosilicate glass and look for tempered or just plain old glass. If you have any questions, let me know in those comments down below. I'm always happy to answer those for you. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and as always, happy crafting.